Yo, Chris Warren here. I just wanted to do a quick video on the top 5 differences between an Ursa Mini Pro G2 and an Ursa Mini Pro 12K. Let's get to it. The first major difference is the resolution and the stops. This camera, obviously, 12K resolution. This one, 4.6K resolution. Now, the stop difference can make or break it. On paper, the 12K is listed as having 14 stops. Personally, I think there's a little bit more, especially now with the recent firmware released 7.7, improved shadow detail. So it says 14 stops. The G2, 4.6K sensor, but it's marketed as having 15 plus stops. Me personally, coming from a Blackmagic Ursa Mini Pro G1, I can attest that the 15 stops are definitely there, as I've put it side by side with an Alexa. So whichever one you choose, whether you want more resolution or less dynamic range, or less resolution, more dynamic range, it's really up to you. Difference number 2 is recording codec. The Ursa Mini Pro 12K is B-RAW only, whereas the G2 has both B-RAW and ProRes. So it really depends on what you're doing post-wise. Whether if you're handling the footage just yourself, both cameras can work, especially the 12K because it's B-RAW, you can handle it, you can lower the resolution and resolve while you're editing. But if you're passing off to a lot of clients or post houses and they really are expecting a ProRes container, the G2 might be better suited for you, because not only do you have proxy LT HQ, but you also have 444 and XQ options in the G2 model. And you get all resolutions in ProRes. So it really depends on what you're looking for. The third difference between these two cameras is the color science. So the 12K is on Gen 5, which is great. Awesome highlight roll-off, beautiful skin tones, and it handles reds much better, especially with like brake lights and neons. The G2 camera is still on Gen 4. Don't get me wrong, still an awesome color science, matches well with an Alexa, looks great, but I know a lot of people who have trouble matching their G2s to, say, a Pocket 4K or a Pocket 6K, which are already updated to Gen 5. Blackmagic says they're working on a firmware to come for this camera to upgrade it. We don't know when. However, you could still get Gen 5 color science on the G2, but there's a catch. You have to shoot Blackmagic RAW. And then in Resolve, you can change the color science under the RAW settings. Difference number 4 between these two cameras is where the SSD port is. So if you're one who records on your little SSD drive, if you're shooting on a G2, you have to plug it in where like the CFast and the SD cards are. Doesn't really allow you to shut the door fully. Some people may find that annoying, some people deal with it. Where the 12K is, the SSD port is on the back. It's just more accessible. I find it easier. So that's a physical difference between the two bodies. So the fifth and final difference between these two cameras is actually firmware stuff. So the 12K has a horizon meter, which is very similar to, I think, what the Pocket 4K and 6K have, that little horizon crosshairs. So the 12K has that, which is really cool, especially with operating handheld or like an easy rig. I can find that I'm level. Also, the 12K has a deeper focus magnification on the little flip out LCD. I could zoom that way in and I could drag it around. Whereas the G2, you can't. You just punch in. I think you could drag it around, but it's not as deep or pinched to focus. It's just kind of a one in, one out. So that's a difference. Also, frame guides. So the 12K has custom frame guides, much like the G1 actually. You can dial in 1:1, 4:5, 2:1. You can even double tap and enter in your own custom aspect ratio. Unfortunately, the G2 doesn't have that yet. Now, it's not a big deal. A lot of monitors out there, you can enter in those aspect ratios and frame guides and stuff like that. but it's nice having it within the camera, especially like if you're outputting the signal to like clients and stuff, where you can see what frame guides you're intending. So there you have it, guys. Those are the 5 differences between a Blackmagic Ursa Mini Pro 12K and a Blackmagic Ursa Mini Pro G2.